connect a region of over 600 cultural bridges between our lands.
Hello, I'm Alma Angeles. Welcome to ASEAN in Focus. We're coming to you live from Manila and Thailand. Hello, Esther.
Hi, Alma. I'm Esther Adanga from EBC Thailand Bureau, bringing you the news in the dynamic ASEAN region.
On today's headlines. Only one case against presidential candidate Ferdinand or Bongbong Marcos Jr. remains pending with the Commission on Elections after the First Division unanimously voted to junk the consolidated case against the former senator.
Some Filipinos were among 12 people injured by falling debris Thursday as Saudi military blew up a Yemeni rebel bomb-laden drone targeting an airport close to the border.
The Ministry of the Defense of the State of Israel, through the Israeli Embassy in Manila, donated 16,000 units of antigen test kits to the Department of National Defense of the Philippines to help its fight against COVID-19. First in our news, only one case against presidential candidate Ferdinand Bongbong Marcos Jr. remains pending with the Commission on Elections after the First Division unanimously voted to junk the consolidated case against the former senator on Thursday. Take a look. The consolidated petitions of Ilagan v. Marcos Jr. versus Marcos Jr., Akbayan versus Marcos Jr., and Manjelen versus Marcos Jr. have been dismissed for lack of merit, according to COMELEC spokesperson James Jimenez in a post on his Twitter account. In the decision penned by Commissioner Aimee P. Ferolino and signed by COMELEC Commissioner Marlon Caquejo, the First Division said the petitioners failed to prove that the Court of Appeals penalized Marcos with perpetual disqualification from public office for his several counts of tax violation. It also said the consolidated case didn't show any proof that Marcos was convicted for a crime involving moral turpitude, citing the Supreme Court ruling on the case of Philippines versus Ferdinand Marcos and Imelda Marcos. The First Division said, "We see no illegal infirmity in adopting the said dictum in the hopes of finally putting the issue on moral turpitude to rest." In his separate opinion on the case, Casquejo defended the validity of their decision. Casquejo said, quote, "The Commission is confronted with legal issues subject to strong public scrutiny. But no matter how unpopular our findings and appreciation of facts and the law is, we must remain unperturbed and apply the law as it is." Following the decision of the COMELEC First Division on the consolidated case, only the case filed by Pudno Nga Ilocano against Marcos is left of the 7 original cases seeking to remove the former lawmaker from the 2022 presidential race. The Second Division earlier junked the petition of Danilo Lihay to have Marcos declared as a nuisance candidate, and the petition of Christian Buenafe and others, as well as that of Tiburcio Villamor to have the former senator's COC cancelled. The Partido Reforma Senate slate of the Lacson Soto tandem no longer includes Senator Sherwin Gatchalian and former Quezon City Mayor Herbert Bautista. On Thursday, standard-bearer Senator Panfilo Ping Lacson confirmed that Gatchalian is no longer with their team. He said in a tweet it was obvious that Gatchalian and Bautista, who have indicated support for and made high-profile appearances in rival teams, are no longer with them. Gatchalian and Bautista are members of the Nationalist People's Coalition, where Lacson's running mate, Senate President Vicente Soto III, is National Party Chairman. The two senatorial candidates did not join the Lacson-Soto tandem in Cavite, but were present at the Marcos Duterte proclamation rally in Bulacan. Meanwhile, in a text message, Soto said they're still checking on Senator Richard Gordon and former Vice President Jeju Marbinay, who were also absent from the Lacson-Soto proclamation rally. Staying in the country, a phreato magmatic burst occurred within the main crater of Taal volcano. That according to the Philippine Institute of Volcanology and Seismology on Thursday night. Phreato-magmatic eruptions are caused by the interaction of magma and water. Eruptions normally consist of multiple explosive events, the interval of which may vary. The eruption on Thursday happened around 4:16 in the afternoon and lasted for 27 seconds. It generated white plume 300 meters high. No eruption followed. In the Taal Volcano Bulletin issued at 8 a.m., PHIVOLC said no volcanic earthquake was detected for the past 24 hours. Upwelling of hot volcanic fluids in its lake generated plumes 1,000 meters tall that drifted southwest. Further, the sulfur dioxide emission averaged 8,686 tons on February 8. Taal volcano remains under alert level 2, increased unrest, which means that sudden steam or gas-driven explosions, volcanic quakes, minor ashfall, and lethal explosions of volcanic gas may occur and threaten areas within and around the Taal Volcano Island or TVI. Entry into the TVI Taal's permanent danger zone must be strictly prohibited. Meanwhile, Malacanang on Thursday said the Interagency Task Force for the Management of Emerging Infectious Diseases has approved the recommendation of the Department of Foreign Affairs to recognize the national COVID-19 vaccination certificates issued by Brazil, Israel, South Korea, and Timor-Leste. Take a look.
Agency Task Force or IATF. Inaprubahan ng IATF ang recommendation ng Department of Foreign Affairs na kilalanin ang mga national COVID-19 vaccination certificate ng Brazil, Israel, South Korea at Timor-Leste for purposes of arrival quarantine protocols as well as for interzonal, intrazonal movement. Kung inyong matatandaan, may nauna na tayo mga bansa, teritoryo, jurisdictions kung saan ang kanilang proofs of vaccination ay ating kinilala at tinanggap. Kaugnay nito, inatasan ang Bureau of Quarantine, Department of Transportation One-Stop Shop at Bureau of Immigration na kilalanin ang proofs of vaccination ng 4 na bansang aking binanggit.
The IATF earlier approved the acceptance of the national COVID-19 vaccination certificate of Slovenia, Bahrain, Qatar, Switzerland, and Hong Kong. Nograles said the Bureau of Quarantine, the Department of Transportation One-Stop Shop, and the Bureau of Immigration are also directed to recognize only the proofs of vaccination thus approved by the IATF. Meanwhile, the Bureau of Immigration spokesperson Dana Sandoval said the number of inbound foreign tourists and business travelers is not expected to reach pre-pandemic figures in the first few months, despite a significant increase in international arrivals on Thursday. We believe that the first ones who will arrive are families, partners, and loved ones of Filipinos who have long waited for an opportunity to reunite and be together, according to Sandoval in an interview with the Philippine News Agency. In a news release, the Bureau of Immigration said the inbound international travelers has significantly increased from Wednesday's 4,816 to almost 7,000 on Thursday, overseas Filipino workers included. Sandoval said the Bureau of Immigration's manpower is in full force in time for the influx of inbound travelers as the country reopened its borders after almost 2 years of closure due to COVID-19 pandemic restrictions.
In other news, 12 people were injured by falling debris Thursday as the Saudi military blew up a Yemeni rebel bomb-laden drone targeting an airport close to the border, officials said. Fragments fell to the ground after the interception of the drone over Abha International Airport, which has previously been targeted in similar assaults by Iran-backed insurgents. The Houthis claim responsibility for the attack, saying they had targeted an airport used for military action against Yemen and warning citizens to stay away from such sites. The United States was quick to condemn the attack and pledge to work with Saudi Arabia to hold the Houthis accountable. In recent weeks, the Houthis also launched deadly cross-border attacks for the first time against fellow coalition member, the United Arab Emirates, after suffering a series of battlefield defeats at the hands of UAE-trained pro-government forces. 12 civilians were injured from flying debris, including from Bangladesh, India, Nepal, Sri Lanka, and the Philippines, he added in a statement carried by official Saudi press agency. 2 Saudi citizens were among those hurt. Yemen's civil war broke out in 2014 when the Houthis seized Sana'a, prompting the Saudi-led coalition to intervene the following year to prop up the internationally recognized government. Hundreds of thousands of people have been killed directly or indirectly in the conflict, while millions have been displaced in what the UN calls the world's biggest humanitarian crisis. Meanwhile, Indonesia on Thursday ordered 42 Rafale fighter jets from France, may require 2 French submarines, while United States approved Jakarta's potential purchase of 36 F-15s in the face of growing tensions in the Asia-Pacific. Take a look.
Indonesia merencanakan pembelian alutsista yang cukup signifikan untuk multi-role combat aircraft. Kita rencananya akan mengakuisisi 42 pesawat Rafale. Kita mulai hari ini dengan tanda tangan kontrak pertama untuk 6 pesawat yang akan disusul dalam waktu dekat dengan kontrak untuk 36 pesawat lagi dengan.
Le choix que fait l'Indonésie, c'est le choix de la souveraineté et de l'excellence technique, avec un avion qui a démontré ses capacités opérationnelles à de nombreuses reprises et qui est quotidiennement engagé sur des théâtres d'opération complexes et exigeants.
Indonesia's first order for French warplanes comes as Jakarta replaces an aging fleet consisting mainly of American F-16s and Russian Sukhois as concerns grow about rising U.S.-China tensions in Asia. The Rafale agreement was announced as Indonesian Defense Minister Prabowo Subianto met his French counterpart Florence Parly in Jakarta. Subianto confirmed a deal had been struck for the purchase of the jets, which a contract signed Thursday relating to the first 6. France's defense ministry said the contract for the 42 aircraft and their weapon was worth $8.1 billion, or approximately 7.1 billion euros. Spokesman Hervé Grandjean said the 2 countries also signed a letter of intent for research and development with a view to Indonesia ordering 2 Scorpion submarines. Meanwhile, the U.S. State Department said it had approved the potential F-15S sale along with other assorted military equipment for an estimated $14 billion. The proposed sale will improve the security of an important regional partner that is a force for political stability and economic progress in the Asia-Pacific region, said a statement, adding that it will not alter the basic military balance in the region. It didn't mention China, whose rise Washington is seeking to counter in the region, and gave no indication when the sale could be concluded. The Rafale deal is the latest sign of warming ties between Jakarta and Paris as France rethinks its alliances in the region following a collapse in September of a multi-billion-dollar Australian submarine deal. The top diplomats of the United States, Australia, Japan, and India opened talks in Melbourne Friday on deepening their Quad alliance, hoping to blunt China's expanding power across the Asia-Pacific region. Take a look.
We live in a very fragile, fragmented and contested world, and that is no more accentuated than here in our Indo-Pacific. And the like-minded partners that we see gathered together in this Quad, I always find so incredibly reassuring. I'm reassured by our perspective. I'm reassured by the understanding that is shared between each of us.
U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken said that even though Russia's threat to Ukraine occupies Washington right now, the longer-term challenge is China's advance, challenging the traditional order. The Quad was launched in 2017, but only took root a decade later after China aggressively projected its military power into the South China Sea and following violent border clashes with India. While the four held joint naval exercises in 2020 in the Bay of Bengal, the meetings in Melbourne are aimed at the deepening cooperation across other fields like fighting COVID-19 and coordinating on critical information technology issues, including the global rollout of 5G telecommunications network. In January, Japanese Foreign Minister Hayashi told the country's legislature that the Quad was about establishing a free and open order based on the rule of law in the Indo-Pacific region. While China has been the focus of the Quad, the four countries say the Melbourne meeting is about practical cooperation and, in Blinken's words, an affirmative vision on a range of challenges such as agreeing on technology standards and cooperating on health issues and climate change. The Department of Foreign Affairs, or DFA, on Thursday said Indian Minister of External Affairs Dr. Subrayaham Jaishankar will be in the Philippines from January 13 to 15 for a working visit. He is set to meet Foreign Affairs Secretary Teodoro Locsin Jr. to discuss the current and future directions of Philippine-India relations, including health and security cooperation, as well as other regional and global matters of mutual interest. Minister Jaishankar's visit is considered an affirmation of the commitment between the Philippines and India to further relations in a post-COVID world, the DFA said in a statement. The two top diplomats are expected to review developments in bilateral relations since the meeting of the Joint Mission on Bilateral Cooperation that they co-chaired in virtual format in November 2020. Filipinos are counting on New York City Mayor Eric Adams to make the streets safe again by addressing homelessness and mental health issues that have contributed to the surge in anti-Asian hate, violence against Filipinos and other members of Asian American community in the past year. This was personally conveyed by New York City Commissioner for International Affairs, Edward A. Mermelstein, during a courtesy call on Consul General Elmer G. Cato at the Philippine Consulate General on February 3. We welcome the plans of Mayor Adams to address homelessness and mental health, as these concerns are inextricably linked to the rise in Asian hate incidents in New York City, Consul General Cato said. During the meeting, Cato said he is hoping to see a downtrend in race-based violence in the coming months based on the plans of Mayor Adams to devote more resources to New York City Police Department and increase police visibility, especially in the subways. According to crime statistics released by NYPD last month, anti-Asian hate incidents went up 365% from 28 incidents in 2020 to 131 in 2021. The NYPD also reported arresting 58 suspects in these incidents. Cato said at least 23 members of the Filipino community were among the victims, including 61-year-old church worker whose face was slashed while riding a subway, a 65-year-old woman who was violently attacked while walking to church, and a 67-year-old nurse who was assaulted while distributing face masks also in the subway. For his part, Commissioner Mermelstein assured consulate officials that addressing the surge in anti-Asia hate crimes is a top priority for Mayor Adams, a former police officer who he said has zero tolerance for race-based violence.
In other news, Vietnam on Wednesday arrested a high-profile environmentalist known for talking on the energy industry on suspicion of tax evasion, according to state media. Nguyen Thi Can, 46, has been one of the few voices in Vietnam prepared to challenge plans to increase coal power to fuel economic development. Her organized Greened, Vietnam's best-known environmental NGO, convinced the government to reduce some of its coal targets and sparked a national conversation about rising air and water pollution. But while she has won international plaudits, she has also been the target of smear campaigns on state-sponsored media sites and is routinely attacked by trolls on Facebook who criticize her work. The state-owned Two Trade newspaper on Wednesday said Can had been arrested by police in the capital, Hanoi, on a tax evasion accusation. No further details were given. Communist Vietnam tolerates no dissent, and numerous activities have wound up in jail for speaking out against the government. Authorities have recently stepped up raids on corrupt officials as well as people involved in financial or economic scandals. Can's organization has been successful in persuading the government to strip 20,000 megawatts of coal power from the National Energy Plan by 2030. Her goal for the coming years is for Vietnam to scale back its ambitious coal plants in favor of more renewable energy options. And the news continues here on ASEAN in Focus. Esther and I will be back right after this break. Stay tuned.
Arnie Aquino here at Hatley Castle, one of the filming locations for the X-Men series. Don't forget to tune in to Digital Nest only on Net25.
Ang pangangampanya sa panahon ng eleksyon ay para ring paglalako ng produkto at serbisyo sa merkado. Paano nga ba mapapansin ng mga boboto ang mga manok ng bawat partido? In this episode, we'll have a look at the Philippine elections then and now, the big difference between campaigning in the past and in the present in the midst of a pandemic. We'll speak with candidates and the people behind the elections and ask them what factors drive a strong campaign that translates to an election victory. All this in this episode of Open for Business.
Welcome back. The Ministry of Defense of the State of Israel, through the Israeli Embassy in Manila, donated 16,000 units of antigen test kits to the Department of National Defense, or DND, of the Philippines to help its fight against COVID-19. Israeli diplomats Ambassador Ilan Fluss and Defense Attaché Mr. Raz Shabtay turned over the antigen test kits to National Defense Secretary Delphine Lorenzana. Ambassador Fluss said friends support each other in times of need. Israel is a friend of the Philippines and will continue to assist and share its expertise in various fields. He said he's proud to deliver this Israeli assistance today to support the Department of National Defense of the Philippines in keeping the country safe and secure. Israel continues to assist the Philippines in combating COVID-19. In 2021, the Israeli government turned over personal protective equipment to the Department of National Defense and the Philippine National Police. Two Israeli delegations of medical experts assisted the country's national vaccination campaign and shared Israel's local clinical guidelines for COVID infection control protocols and hospital management. Israel also continues to share its experience and knowledge in emergency and pandemic response with the Philippines through webinars, courses, and joint meetings. The handover ceremony was held at the DND headquarters in Quezon City on February 9. Meanwhile, Indonesia began testing a homegrown COVID-19 vaccine on humans on Wednesday after getting the green light from the drug regulator as the country faces a rising wave of virus cases. Research on the Merah Putih, or red-white, as translated, named after the colors of the Indonesian national flag, is led by Airlangga University and Biotis Pharmaceutical Indonesia. The project has suffered delays since starting in 2020, but authorities are now hoping to authorize its use by the middle of this year if the trials are successful. Health Minister Budi Gunadi Sadikin said the drug, set to be rolled out in the latter stages of Indonesia's vaccination campaign, could be donated to other nations as a booster jab or as a vaccine for children aged 3 to 6. The first and second phases of the clinical trials will involve 90 and 405 adult volunteers, respectively.
Meanwhile, a Chinese city of 3.5 million near the border with Vietnam was on lockdown Monday after more than 70 coronavirus cases were discovered there over the past 3 days. China, the only major world economy still sticking to a staunch zero-COVID policy, is on high alert for any outbreaks as it hosts the Beijing Winter Olympics. Local officials in the city of Baise in southern Guangxi region announced Sunday that no one would be allowed to leave the city, while residents of some districts would be confined to their homes. Citywide traffic controls will be implemented, according to Vice Mayor Gu Chunyan in a briefing. Gu added that residents of some neighborhoods in smaller rural cities and countries under Baise's jurisdiction have been placed under strict home confinement, while others cannot leave for their district. Baise, located about 100 kilometers or 62 miles from the Vietnamese border, on Friday discovered its first local case, a traveler who had returned home for the week-long Lunar New Year holiday, according to officials. Since the pandemic, China has built a heavily enforced wire mesh fence along its southern border to keep out illegal migrants from Vietnam and Myanmar, as well as potential COVID-19 infections. Mass testing is already underway for residents. The government targets to complete the administration of 2 COVID-19 primary doses to at least 70 million Filipinos by March 31. Dr. Ted Herbosa, the Special Medical Advisor of National Task Force, or NTF, against COVID-19, said fully vaccinating at least 70 million individuals is crucial to achieving population protection in the entire country, complementing the government's exit plan to the pandemic. Take a look.
Yung targets na yun, no? Yung 5 million, sana umabot pa nga ng 6 million. Nasa ano na tayo ngayon, Yusek Rocky? 59.8 as of February 4 ang fully vaccinated Filipinos. So, very important, maabot natin by March 31 yung 70 million or 70% ng ating population para fully vaccinated na. And tuloy-tuloy yung pagbabakuna sa ating mga below 18 at yung mga booster dose, yung mga matagal nang hindi pa nabakunahan, may 3 months na, pwede na rin magpabakuna today. No? Ang maganda sa vaccination days, hindi kailangan mag-pre-register. Pwede pong basta tumuloy na lang doon at mag-walk-in at magparehistro sa ating over 12,000 vaccination centers nationwide.
The government on Thursday started the third Bayanihan Bakunahan massive vaccination drive to simultaneously inoculate at least 5 million Filipinos nationwide until Friday. Herbosa reiterated that the initiative aims to capacitate the local government units or LGUs that are still lagging in their vaccination drive, including the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao. Myanmar's junta suffered a fresh diplomatic blow Thursday as regional bloc ASEAN barred its top diplomat from attending an upcoming meeting of foreign ministers. Cambodia, which it currently holds the black rotating chairmanship, said there had been too late progress on a 5-point consensus agreed by leaders last year to try to defuse the crisis gripping Myanmar. The country has been in turmoil since the military ousted Aung San Suu Kyi's civilian government a year ago, with more than 1,500 civilians since killed in crackdowns on anti-junta protests, according to a local monitoring group. Since there has been little progress in carrying out ASEAN's 5-point consensus, the ASEAN member states did not reach a consensus to invite Myanmar's sacked foreign minister, Wonam Wang Win, to participate in the upcoming foreign ministers' retreat, Cambodia Foreign Minister spokesman Chum Sondri told AFP. Myanmar's military government calls itself the State Administration Council, or SAC. Chum Sondri said, "We have asked Myanmar to send non-political representative instead." The snub comes after the 10-Nation Association of Southeast Asian Nations, or ASEAN, took the unprecedented step of barring junta leader Min Aung Hlaing from a summit in October. It represented a rare rebuke from ASEAN, long seen as toothless talking shop, but which has sought fully diplomatic efforts to tackle the Myanmar crisis. Myanmar is increasingly isolated on the international stage, with Cambodian strongman ruler Hun Sen's January visit, the first of any foreign leader since the general seized power. But violence has continued, with anti-junta groups clashing regularly with military, and the World Bank has warned Myanmar's economy likely contracted by almost a fifth last year.
In other news, a wild crocodile in Indonesia who was trapped in a tire for more than 5 years has been rescued, freed from its rubber vise, and released back into the wild. Let's take a look.
Talinya di ujung. Ore. Dan minta tolong harus ke sini besok sama ketemu sama saya. Dua tangan. Seragen. Nanti Pak, saya sendiri tangkap Pak. Cuma saya minta tolong orang takut. Memang saya sudah jerat. Iya. Pakai jerat 3 kemarin, jerat 2 putus terus 2 kali dikasih putus. Iya, Mas. Saya hari Senin. Berapa lama Mas? Berapa lama Mas? 3 minggu saya jalani. 3 minggu.
Gerak.
Mana nih?
Ugara dia ugara.
Ban belakang. Merek Aspira. Hah? Merek.
And more news will be coming your way here on ASEAN in Focus. Please stay tuned.
Alam namin ang iyong pagsisikap. Dama namin ang iyong mga sakripisyo. Kita namin ang pagharap mo sa bawat pagsubok. Kaya sa kabila ng mga hamon ng buhay, nandito kami para umalalay. Kasi katulad mo, gusto rin namin ang magandang bukas para sa kanya. Hatid namin ang dekalidad na edukasyon at makabagong pasilidad sa abot kayang halaga. Kaya huwag ka na mangamba. Sasamahan ka namin tuparin ang mga pangarap niya. Maaasahan mong sulit dito ang mga pinagsikapan mo. Sa aming mga makabagong pasilidad at sistema ng edukasyon. Mailalabas natin ang aking talino at mga kakayahan niya. Kahit sa munting halaga, makakasiguro ka na makakasabay siya sa mabilis na pag-ikot ng mundo. Sa new era, karamay mo kami sa bawat hamon. Kaagapay mo kami sa bawat hakbang. Kasama mo kami sa bawat ngiti at tagumpay.
This week, tayo'y gagawa ng Pansit Canton Gisado, isa sa aking paborito, chicken, potato, celery salad, at ang ating tuna melt on sourdough toast. Ito po ang tinatawag ko na comfort food. At ito na po, titikman ko na po. Lasang Pinoy na Pinoy. Pusong Pinoy. Walang tatalo sa pansit natin.
Welcome to Mobile Legends!
Welcome back. Japan and the Philippines on Thursday signed a 253.3 billion yen or 112.1 billion peso loan agreement for the Metro Manila Subway Project Phase 1. The Japanese Embassy in Manila said this second tranche of official development assistance loan follows Tokyo's first tranche of funding of 104.53 billion yen, which was signed in March 2018. The agreement was inked by Finance Secretary Carlos Dominguez III and Japan International Cooperation Agency or JICA Philippine Representative Azukisawa Eigo in a ceremony also attended by Japanese Ambassador Koshikawa Kazuhiko. As one of the flagship developments under the Build, Build, Build program, the 17-station subway will reduce the travel time between Quezon City and Ninoy Aquino International Airport from the current 70 minutes to only 35 minutes. It also seeks to address the worsening congestion in Metro Manila caused by poor road network and the rising population's demand for transportation. Meanwhile, Asian markets sank today after a sell-off on Wall Street in response to a forecast-busting jump in U.S. inflation that fanned expectations the Federal Reserve will embark on a more aggressive campaign of monetary tightening. The 7.5% jump in prices last month was the fastest in 40 years and reinforced fears that the central bank is falling behind the curve in keeping it under control, which has fed a sense of uncertainty across trading floors. U.S. stocks immediately sank on the news, but managed to claw their way back as the day progressed before being hit by Fed official James Bullard, who said he wanted to see interest rates lifted 1 percentage point by the start of July. The St. Louis Fed boss said he was in favor of a 50 basis point lift next month, double the usual rise and the first since 2000, and 2 more after that.
The Department of Labor and Employment, or DOLE, is now willing to lift the deployment restriction for the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, or KSA, if its government could settle at least 50% of the total financial claims of over 11,000 displaced overseas Filipino workers. Labor and Employment Secretary Silvestre H. Bello III disclosed he made the offer to the Saudi Arabia's ambassador to the Philippines, Hisham Sultan Al-Zafir Al-Qatani, during their meeting earlier this week. Take a look.
I told him, Your Excellency, even if you only settle for the moment 50% of the claims of our OFWs, I will have all the reason to lift the suspension of deployment, I said. And the reaction of the ambassador was very positive. He said, I will talk to the king, our king, he said. Kaya tinitiyak ko na kapag pag-deploy tayo muli doon, hindi na sila dadaan sa ganong klaseng treatment. Hindi na babayaran yung sweldo nila. And in addition, gusto rin namin maklaro yung mga policies and rules governing the treatment of our overseas Filipino workers. Dahil ang dami doon, pupunta sila doon. Pagdating doon, iba ang kanilang employer. Pagdating doon, ililipat sila, ibebenta sila sa ibang employers. Ganun.
He said the pronouncement was well received by the Saudi official, who promised to relay it to his superior. Bello said the claims of displaced OFWs stand at around 5.1 billion. DOLE suspended the deployment of OFWs for Saudi construction and mega recruitment companies amid the pending settlement of the claims of 11,000 OFWs from Saudi construction firms. It spent 3 billion pesos to bring home the OFWs in 2016 after Saudi authorities committed to help in the payment of the claims. Meanwhile, Taiwan has finally allowed the entry of Filipino and Vietnamese workers after an 8-month ban on all foreign nationals, including migrant workers, in the island due to the spike of COVID-19 cases in 2021. In an advisory posted online, the Taiwan Center for Disease Control has announced Monday that beginning February 15, 2022, employers in Taiwan may now bring in foreign workers from the Philippines, Vietnam, Indonesia, and Thailand who are fully vaccinated against COVID-19. Take a look.
Na tatanggap muli sila ng mga foreign workers at kasama dyan yung ating overseas Filipino workers. Napakawagandang balita ito dahil alam mo naman, meron mga mahigit 12,000 mga OFWs na naghihintay sa kanilang pagbalik sa Taiwan. So napakalaking job opening na naman ito para sa ating mga migrant workers, and hopefully by February 15 ay pwede na silang pumunta doon. So, in addition, later on, dadami. Dahil alam mo naman, diyan sa Taiwan, maganda ang kanilang mga privileges, magaling ang treatment sa kanila.
Ida Herodias, president of the Filipino Manpower Agencies accredited to Taiwan, said the lifting of the ban is a great relief for 15,000 OFWs who are now waiting to be deployed to Taiwan anytime. Most of these OFWs are factory workers and caregivers. A factory worker in Taiwan earns about 25,250 new Taiwanese dollar, or approximately 45,420 a month, while a caregiver's salary is 17,000 new Taiwan dollar, or approximately 30,600 peso a month. Malacanang is confident that the country's employment rate will rebound during the first quarter of the year as the government eases the alert level in the National Capital Region, or NCR, and other parts of the country. Acting presidential spokesman Carlos Nogales issued this statement after the Philippine Statistics Authority, or PSA, reported on Thursday that the unemployment rate in December rose to 6.6% compared to 6.5% the month before. Let's listen in.
Bagamat umakyat ng 0.1 yung unemployment, tandaan natin na tumaas din po yung labor force participation. Ibig ko sabihin, nung November to December, marami rin po ang bumalik sa labor force. Okay? So mas marami sa mga kababayan natin na dating wala sa labor force o umalis sa labor force, bumalik po sa labor force. So ganyan po ang isang dapat nating tandaan dyan. Pangalawa po, tingnan din po natin yung underemployment rate. No? At sa underemployment rate naman po, nag-improve naman po tayo. No? From 16.7 in November to 14.7 in December. But that being said, these are November-December figures. And with alert level 2 happening in many parts of our country, bagamat meron pang alert level 3, at ngayon wala naman naka-alert level 4 so far, mas ma-expect pa natin na yung January, February, March, and so on and so forth, especially with the opening ng turismo right now sa February, we expect better numbers in the coming months of 2022.
The Interagency Task Force for the Management of Emerging Infectious Disease hoisted an alert level 3 in NCR and other parts of the country last month amid the surge in COVID-19 infections, triggering the closure of more establishments brought about by the local spread of the Omicron variant. It only started downgrading the alert levels in the said areas, including NCR, this month, as COVID-19 cases finally started to decline, allowing more businesses to resume operations.
And finally in our news, a bullet-torn shirt, photos of freedom fighters. These are among the exhibits documenting Indonesia's struggle for independence from the Dutch in a groundbreaking show at Amsterdam's Rijksmuseum. Revolusi Indonesia Independent, which opens to the public on Friday, is designed to open a discussion on a troubled era between the Netherlands and one of its most prized colonies, according to organizers. And the aim is to examine from both Indonesian and Dutch perspectives the Southeast Asia country's fight for freedom from declaring its independence in August 1945 to Dutch recognition in 1949 after 4 years of bloody fighting. Take a look.
But this sort of period of time is very fundamental period in both countries, especially for Indonesia, because this is the time when we decide to to liberate ourselves as a nation, so people can understand that actually people who live with it, who experience with this revolution, have their own story to tell.
recognized. And it's world history, because it's the first country after the Second World War to become independent and to be recognized by the United Nations, which has just been founded, and many other countries would follow suit. Many people suffered greatly under the violence, under the extreme violence during the revolution. And this pain is still felt today. So with organizing an exhibition that is now so relevant still in society, you also have to expect that there are a lot of emotions about this subject. And it's very good that this subject is now discussed, and that was the goal.
In recent years, the Netherlands has finally started to grapple with the legacy of its history of colonialism. The Rijksmuseum last year held an exhibition of the Dutch history of slavery, but the 3th-century Dutch occupation of Indonesia, once known as the Dutch East Indies, in particular, remains a tender subject in the Netherlands. Last month, a group representing victims of Dutch colonialism laid charges against the Rijksmuseum and its director for a term used in the exhibit. The word bersiap, meaning be prepared, is used in the Netherlands to refer to the time just after World War II when Dutch citizens, Chinese and others suspected of sympathizing with the colonial forces were being targeted by independence forces. The group said it was a racist and insulting term used to marginalize a group of citizens of Dutch Indonesian descent. Dutch prosecutors, however, on Wednesday quashed the charges, saying the term does not contain any negative conclusions about Indonesians as a group because of their race. Dutch King Willem-Alexander formally apologized in 2020 for excessive violence during the former colony's independence struggle. Thank you, Esther, for keeping me company today here on ASEAN in Focus. Keep safe this weekend. And I'd like to congratulate our Bureau Chief there in ASEAN, Cristel Mapa, who's getting married today. Congratulations to you. Always.
Yes, Alva. Congratulations, Cristel Mapa, our Bureau Chief. Best wishes from all of us here in ASEAN, in the ASEAN Bureau. And that is the latest news in the Southeast Asian nations. Stay updated about the ASEAN region. I'm Esther Odanga from Thailand Bureau, and we live in interesting times.
Thank you very much, Esther. And that's it for tonight's broadcast. Join us again next week for more of ASEAN in Focus. Same time, same place, and stay in the news because we live in interesting times.